Picture this. You're sitting in a boardroom, being told to fire 15 of your best people and replace them with software. Your CEO slides a tablet across the table showing AI analytics that promise to cut costs by 70%. The venture. Capitalists nod approvingly as they explain how machine learning will make your entire team obsolete. You have 48 hours to decide. Destroy the careers of people who trust you, or lose your own job for refusing to comply. Most people would cave to the pressure. Most people would follow orders and sleep poorly for the rest of their lives. But sometimes when you're pushed too far, you discover something powerful about yourself. Sometimes you realize that the people trying to corner you have no idea who they're dealing with. 3 years ago, I was that woman in the boardroom, facing that impossible choice. Today, those same executives who threatened to fire me are begging me to save their failing company. This is the story of how refusing to sacrifice my team for artificial intelligence led me to build something that crushed every assumption they had about the future of work. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and until 3 years ago, I was the Director of Customer Experience at Pinnacle Digital, a data analytics firm based in Denver, Colorado. I'd worked my way up from entry-level customer support to running a department of 18 brilliant people who handled client relationships for some of the biggest technology companies in the world. We weren't just answering phones or responding to emails. My team consisted of data scientists, relationship managers, technical specialists, and strategic consultants who understood our clients' businesses better than most of their own employees. The morning that changed everything started like any other Tuesday in October. I arrived at our downtown office at 7:30, coffee in hand, ready to review the quarterly reports that showed our department had exceeded every performance metric for the 6th consecutive quarter. Client satisfaction scores were at an all-time high of 94%. Our retention rate had climbed to 98%, meaning we were keeping clients who had never stayed with analytics firms for more than 2 years. Most importantly, our strategic recommendations had generated over $42 million in additional revenue for our clients in just the previous quarter. I should have known something was wrong when I found the meeting invitation that had appeared in my calendar overnight. 9 a.m., Conference Room A, with CEO Bradley Morrison and 3 people I didn't recognize listed as external attendees. The subject line read simply, Strategic Review, Confidential. Conference Room A was our largest meeting space, with floor-to-ceiling, windows overlooking the Rocky Mountains, and a mahogany table that could seat 20 people. When I walked in, Bradley was already there, looking uncomfortable in a way I'd never seen before. He was fidgeting with his phone and avoiding eye contact, which was completely unlike the confident leader who usually commanded every room he entered. The 3 strangers were arranged along one side of the table like a tribunal. The woman in the center looked to be in her 40s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit, with the kind of severe expression that suggested she was used to making difficult decisions. The 2 men flanking her were younger, probably in their 30s, both staring at laptops with the intense focus of people analyzing data in real time. Bradley cleared his throat as I took a seat across from them. Elena, I'd like you to meet Victoria Sinclair and her team from Meridian Capital. They're our new strategic partners, and they've been conducting a comprehensive analysis of our operations. Victoria smiled, but it was the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. Ms. Rodriguez, we've been very impressed with your department's performance metrics. Your team clearly produces exceptional results. I felt a chill run down my spine. In my experience, conversations that started with compliments usually ended with bad news. She continued without waiting for me to respond. However, our analysis has identified some significant opportunities for operational efficiency. Your department currently employs 18 full-time specialists at an average salary of $85,000, plus benefits, which represents an annual cost of approximately $2.1 million. One of the men looked up from his laptop. Our AI modeling suggests that we can achieve 78% of your current output using automated systems and 3 human supervisors. My heart started racing, but I kept my voice steady. I'm sorry, are you suggesting that we fire 15 of my people? Victoria leaned forward, her expression remaining perfectly neutral. We're suggesting that Pinnacle Digital evolve to meet the demands of a rapidly changing marketplace. Artificial intelligence and machine learning have advanced to the point where many traditional customer service functions can be automated more efficiently and cost-effectively than relying on human operators. The second man turned his laptop screen toward me, showing a complex flowchart filled with decision trees and probability matrices. We've mapped your team's most common client interactions and determined that 84% of them follow predictable patterns that can be handled by our proprietary AI platform. The remaining 16% would be escalated to your 3 retained specialists. I stared at the screen, feeling like I was looking at a death warrant for 15 careers. These weren't just statistics to me. Behind every data point was a real person with a mortgage, a family, dreams, and aspirations that extended far beyond their job at Pinnacle Digital. There was Marcus Chen, our senior data scientist, who had turned down offers from Google and Microsoft because he believed in what we were building together. Sarah Williams, our client relationship manager, who had spent 2 years learning the intricacies of each client's business model so she could provide truly strategic advice. David Park, our technical specialist, who had developed innovative analysis frameworks that our clients now considered industry standard. Bradley finally spoke up, though he still wouldn't meet my eyes. Elena, I know this is a lot to process, but the numbers are compelling. We could reduce departmental costs by over 70% while maintaining nearly the same level of service. Quality. Nearly the same level, I repeated slowly. So we're acknowledging that we'll be providing inferior service to our clients in order to save money. Victoria's smile became even more artificial. We prefer to think of it as optimizing resources for maximum efficiency. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The AI systems can operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without breaks, without sick days, without the emotional inconsistencies that affect human performance. That's when I realized what we were really talking about. This wasn't about improving service or increasing efficiency. This was about reducing human beings to cost centers that could be eliminated for the sake of short-term profit margins. These people saw my team members as nothing more than expensive obstacles to their vision of a fully automated future. I took a deep breath and looked directly at Victoria. What you're describing isn't optimization, it's decimation. You want to destroy 15 careers based on a theoretical model that admits it can only achieve 78% of our current performance. Her composure slipped slightly. Ms. Rodriguez, I understand that change can be difficult, but businesses that fail to adapt to technological advances get left behind. Your emotional attachment to traditional methods is understandable, but it's not a sound basis for strategic decision-making. The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. She wasn't just dismissing my objections. She was dismissing me as someone too emotional and too attached to the past to understand the future of business. Bradley leaned forward, trying to mediate. Elena, I need you to think about this carefully. Victoria's team has shown us projections that could increase our profit margins by 35% within the first year. That's growth we can reinvest in other areas of the business. Growth built on the destruction of people's livelihoods, I replied. Bradley, these aren't just employees. They're the reason our clients stay with us year after year. They're the reason we have the highest retention rate in the industry. You can't just replace institutional knowledge and personal relationships with algorithms. Victoria's colleague pulled up another screen on his laptop. Actually, our behavioral analysis suggests that client loyalty is primarily driven by consistent results and response times, both of which can be improved through automation. The personal relationships you're referring to introduce variability and potential points of failure that don't exist with AI systems. I felt anger rising in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. Have you actually spoken to our clients about this? Do you understand what they value about our service? We've analyzed 3 years of client feedback data and satisfaction. Surveys, the other man replied. The patterns are clear. Patterns, I said. You've analyzed patterns in survey data, but you haven't talked to actual human beings about what they need from us. Victoria checked her watch, a clear signal that she considered this discussion to be taking too long. Ms. Rodriguez, we're not here to debate the merits of artificial intelligence versus human labor. We're here to implement a strategic transformation that will position Pinnacle Digital for long-term success. The question is whether you're going to be part of that transformation or an obstacle to it. The threat was unmistakable. I could either cooperate with their plan to fire most of my team, or I would be fired myself. Bradley shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Elena, I need your decision by Friday. Either you'll work with Victoria's team to implement the new structure, or we'll need to find someone who will. I looked around that room, taking in the cold calculation of the venture capitalists, the uncomfortable guilt of my CEO, and the sterile efficiency of their AI projections. 3 years of building something meaningful, 3 years of proving that human expertise could create value that no algorithm could match, and it all came down to this moment. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt something else entirely. I felt clarity. I need the weekend to consider your proposal, I said, standing up from the table. This is obviously a decision that will affect a lot of people, and I want to make sure I fully understand all the implications. Victoria nodded approvingly. That's wise. Change management is always challenging, but I'm confident that once you see the benefits of our approach, you'll be enthusiastic about moving forward. I walked out of that conference room knowing that I would never implement their plan. I would never fire 15 talented people to make room for software that could deliver 78% of their performance. I would never reduce human beings to cost-benefit analyses or treat institutional knowledge as an expendable luxury. But I also walked out knowing something else. If these people wanted to bet everything on artificial intelligence replacing human expertise, I was going to prove them wrong in the most devastating way possible. They had no idea that the woman they were trying to corner had spent the last 3 years not just managing a team, but studying everything about how technology could be used to amplify human capabilities rather than replace them. They thought they were giving me an ultimatum. What they were actually doing was lighting a fuse that would eventually blow up everything they thought they knew about the future of work. The war had just begun, and they had seriously underestimated their opponent. That evening, I sat in my home office staring at my laptop screen, trying to process what had happened in that conference room. The ultimatum kept replaying in my mind, but something else was bothering me too. The whole presentation had felt too polished, too rehearsed, like Victoria and her team had been planning this for months. How long had they been analyzing our operations without anyone knowing? The answer came from an unexpected source. Around 9 p.m., I received a text from Amanda Foster, our IT operations manager. Amanda and I had developed a friendship over the years because she often worked late hours maintaining our systems, and I frequently stayed late reviewing client reports. We'd share coffee and conversation during those quiet evening hours when the office was nearly empty. Her message was brief but urgent. Elena, can you call me? Something weird is happening with the network logs. I called her immediately. Amanda's voice was tense when she answered. I've been running routine security audits this week, and I found something strange. There are access logs showing that someone has been pulling massive amounts of data from our customer service databases going back 6 months. Personnel files, performance metrics, client interaction records, satisfaction surveys, everything. My stomach dropped. Who had access? That's the thing. The access credentials trace back to a consulting firm called Strategic Analytics Group, but I never authorized any external access for them. When I checked with Bradley's office, his assistant said it was approved at the executive level, but there's no paperwork in our system. I was quiet for a moment, pieces clicking into place. Amanda, can you send me everything you found? I need to see exactly what they accessed and when. Already done. Check your encrypted email. Elena, there's something else. The data extraction wasn't random. Whoever did this was specifically looking for information that would support an automation analysis. They pulled productivity metrics, response time data, error rates, client escalation patterns, even psychological profiles from our HR files. After we hung up, I opened Amanda's files and spent the next 3 hours going through the evidence. What I found was even worse than I'd suspected. Strategic Analytics Group wasn't just some consulting firm hired to review our operations. They were a subsidiary of Meridian Capital, Victoria's investment company. They had been secretly analyzing our department for over 6 months, building the case for mass layoffs while we worked every day to exceed our performance targets. But the most damning discovery came when I cross-referenced the dates of their data access with our internal communications. They had been monitoring our team's email communications, reading our strategic planning documents, and even accessing personal performance reviews that contained confidential information about my employees' career goals and financial situations. There was Marcus Chen's performance review, where I had noted his concerns about supporting his elderly parents. Sarah Williams's file contained details about her recent divorce and her need for stable income to maintain custody of her 2 children. David Park's review mentioned his student loan debt and his plans to propose to his girlfriend next spring. These weren't just statistics to build an automation model. These were real people's lives being dissected by strangers who would never face the consequences of their decisions. The more I dug into the files, the clearer the picture became. Meridian Capital had specifically targeted companies with high-performing customer service departments that could be automated. We weren't their first acquisition, and we wouldn't be their last. They had a proven playbook: invest in companies with valuable client relationships, analyze the human-dependent operations, then systematically replace people with AI systems to maximize short-term profits. I found case studies from 3 other companies they had acquired over the past 2 years. Each followed the same pattern. Meridian would bring in their strategic team, present compelling automation projections, implement mass layoffs, and then flip the companies for substantial profits within 18 months. The human cost was never mentioned in their investor presentations. What made me even angrier was discovering that our own CEO had known about this analysis for months. Bradley's email communications with Victoria dated back to January, nearly 10 months before the meeting where they presented their ultimatum to me. He had been complicit in the secret surveillance of his own employees while pretending to support our department's growth initiatives. In one particularly revealing email exchange from March, Bradley had written, "Victoria, I understand the benefits of the automation approach, but Elena Rodriguez has built something special here. Her team's client relationships are the foundation of our competitive advantage. I'm concerned about the risks of moving too quickly." Victoria's response was cold and calculating. "Bradley, sentiment doesn't generate shareholder value. Ms. Rodriguez's emotional attachment to her staff is exactly the kind of inefficiency that prevents companies from scaling effectively. If she can't adapt to necessary changes, she'll need to be replaced along with her outdated methods." Reading those words, I realized that this had never been about giving me a choice. They had already decided to eliminate most of my team. The key meeting on Tuesday was just a formality, a chance for them to appear collaborative while implementing a plan they had been developing for nearly a year. But they had made a crucial mistake. In their rush to analyze our operational data, they had overlooked something important. While they were studying our past performance, I had been quietly researching the future of artificial intelligence and human-computer collaboration. Not because I wanted to replace my team, but because I wanted to understand how technology could make them even more effective. Over the past 18 months, I had been attending conferences, reading research papers, and consulting with AI specialists to understand the real capabilities and limitations of current automation technologies. What I had learned was fascinating and completely contradicted Meridian's simplistic replacement model. The most advanced AI systems weren't replacing human expertise. They were amplifying it. Companies that successfully integrated artificial intelligence were using it to handle routine tasks while freeing human workers to focus on complex problem-solving, creative strategy, and relationship building. The most successful implementations combined the processing power of machines with the emotional intelligence, contextual understanding, and creative thinking that only humans could provide. I had been planning to propose a pilot program that would integrate AI tools into our workflow to enhance our team's capabilities, but the current crisis had accelerated my timeline dramatically. Now, instead of enhancing our existing department, I would need to prove that human-AI collaboration could outperform pure automation on a much larger scale. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in over 2 years. Instead of going to the office, I drove to a coffee shop downtown where I could think clearly without the risk of being overheard by colleagues who might unwittingly report back to Bradley or his new partners. I spent that day developing what would become the foundation of my response to Meridian's ultimatum. If they wanted to bet everything on artificial intelligence replacing human expertise, I would build something that proved the superior value of human-AI collaboration. But I wouldn't do it at Pinnacle Digital under their constraints and surveillance. I would do it independently, with complete control over the vision and implementation. Friday morning arrived too quickly. I had spent 3 sleepless nights analyzing every angle of the situation, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The decision itself had been easy once I understood the full scope of Meridian's plan. The hard part was going to be looking Victoria, Sinclair in the eye and delivering my response without revealing the depth of my knowledge about their deceptive practices. I arrived at the office early, wanting to spend a few minutes with my team before the meeting that would change everything. As I walked through our department, I watched Marcus reviewing client data with the focused intensity that made him such a valuable analyst. Sarah was on a call with one of our largest clients, providing strategic guidance that would probably save them hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next quarter. David was collaborating with 2 colleagues on a new analysis framework that could revolutionize how companies interpreted customer behavior data. These weren't just skilled workers who could be replaced by software. They were innovative thinkers who created value that no algorithm could replicate. The idea that Victoria and her team could reduce their contributions to predictable patterns in a decision tree felt like a fundamental misunderstanding of what made our department successful. At 8:45, I made my way to conference. Room A. Bradley was already there, looking even more uncomfortable than he had on Tuesday. Victoria and her 2 associates were arranged in the same positions, laptops open, ready to document my capitulation to their demands. "Elena," Bradley said as I took my seat, "I hope you've had time to consider the opportunities we discussed." Victoria leaned forward with that same artificial smile. "We're excited to hear your thoughts on the implementation timeline. Our technical team is ready to begin the transition process immediately." I opened the folder I had brought with me and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "I've given your proposal very careful consideration," I said, sliding the paper across the table to Bradley. "This is my formal response." He picked up the paper, and his face went pale as he read. Victoria's expression shifted from confident expectation to confused concern. "This is a resignation letter," Bradley said quietly. "That's correct," I replied. "After extensive analysis, I've concluded that I cannot in good conscience implement a plan that would destroy the careers of 15 exceptional professionals in order to achieve marginal cost savings through inferior service delivery." Victoria's composure finally cracked. "Ms. Rodriguez, I think you're making a serious mistake. This industry is moving toward automation whether you participate or not. You're choosing to be left behind rather than adapting to inevitable change. I looked directly at her, remembering all those months of secret surveillance and deceptive planning. I'm not choosing to be left behind. I'm choosing to build something better. One of her associates spoke up. Better? Ms. Rodriguez? You're walking away from a six-figure salary and equity position to make an ideological point. That doesn't seem like a rational business decision. You're assuming that my only options are capitulation or unemployment, I replied, calmly. You're also assuming that your approach represents the inevitable future of this industry. I disagree with both assumptions. Bradley tried to intervene. Elena, I understand your concerns, but maybe we can find a compromise. Perhaps we could implement the changes more gradually, or retain a larger human team than originally planned. I shook my head. Bradley, this isn't about the specific numbers or timeline. This is about fundamental disagreement regarding the role of human expertise in delivering exceptional service. I believe that artificial intelligence should amplify human capabilities, not replace them. Meridian Capital believes that humans are expensive inefficiencies that should be eliminated whenever possible. Victoria's mask of professionalism was completely gone now. Ms. Rodriguez, your romantic notions about human workers are irrelevant to market realities. Companies that fail to optimize their operations for maximum efficiency will be outcompeted by those that do. Then I suppose we'll have an opportunity to test that theory, I said, standing up from the table. Meridian Capital can implement their automation strategy at Pinnacle Digital, and I'll demonstrate the superior value of human-AI collaboration elsewhere. The silence in the room was deafening. Victoria and her team clearly hadn't expected resistance, and they certainly hadn't expected me to frame my departure as a competitive challenge. You're talking about starting a competing firm, Bradley said, understanding dawning in his voice. I'm talking about proving that there's a better way to integrate technology and human expertise, I corrected. If I'm right, clients will choose superior service over marginally lower costs. If you're right, then pure automation will dominate the market. Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. Ms. Rodriguez, you have no funding, no infrastructure, and no track record as an entrepreneur. Meanwhile, Pinnacle Digital has established client relationships, proven systems, and the backing of serious investors. You're David challenging Goliath, except in this case, Goliath has artificial intelligence. I smiled for the first time during the entire conversation. Victoria, you've made one critical error in your analysis. You've assumed that Goliath always wins. As I walked toward the door, Bradley called after me. Elena, what about your team? What happens to them? I paused at the threshold, looking back at the three people who had just made the biggest mistake of their professional lives. My team consists of brilliant professionals who will land on their feet regardless of what Pinnacle Digital decides to do. But I suspect that some of them might be interested in building something new with someone who values their contributions. Victoria's voice followed me into the hallway. You'll regret this decision, Ms. Rodriguez. The market will prove you wrong, and you'll have sacrificed everything for nothing. I didn't respond, but as I walked back to my office to clean out my desk, I was already planning how to prove her wrong in the most spectacular way possible. Word of my resignation spread through the office like wildfire. By lunchtime, everyone in our department knew that I had walked away from my position rather than implement the automation plan that would eliminate most of their jobs. The reactions were mixed, but intense. Some colleagues seemed relieved that someone had finally stood up to the venture capitalists. Others appeared worried about their job security now that their strongest advocate was gone. Marcus Chen was the first to approach me as I packed up my personal belongings. Elena, is it true that you quit rather than fire us? I looked around my office, taking in the awards on the wall that recognized our team's achievements. the client photos that documented successful partnerships, and the strategic planning documents that outlined the growth initiatives we would never implement together. It's true, Marcus. I couldn't be part of a plan that would treat talented people like disposable resources. Sarah Williams appeared in my doorway, her eyes red from crying. What happens to us now? Are they going to fire everyone anyway? I don't know, I admitted. But I do know that you're all exceptional at what you do, and any company would be lucky to have you. Don't let anyone convince you that machines can replace the value you create. Over the next few hours, almost every member of my team stopped by to express their gratitude, their concern, or their anger about the situation. David Park pulled me aside and quietly asked if I had any plans for the future. Because if you do, he said, I want you to know that some of us would be interested in whatever you're building next. I was careful not to make any promises or commitments that could be construed as recruiting Pinnacle Digital employees, but I made sure each person knew how to reach me outside of work channels. Focus on taking care of yourselves first, I told them. Whatever happens next, we'll figure it out together. By 5 o'clock, my office was empty except for a few personal items and a box of client thank you notes that I had accumulated over the years. As I walked through the department one last time, I could feel the weight of 18 people's futures pressing down on my shoulders. I had just bet everything on my belief that human expertise enhanced by artificial intelligence could outperform pure automation, but belief wasn't enough. I needed to build something that would prove it. The next morning, I began what would become the most challenging and transformative period of my professional life. Instead of rushing into job interviews or networking events, I deliberately stepped back from the industry spotlight. To most observers, it looked like I was taking an extended break to recover from the stress of leaving a high-profile position. In reality, I was conducting the most intensive research project of my career. Every day, I dove deeper into artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies, but not from the perspective of replacing human workers. I was studying how AI could be designed to amplify human capabilities in ways that created exponentially better results than either humans or machines could achieve alone. I reached out to researchers at universities across the country who were working on human-computer interaction. I attended online conferences focused on collaborative AI. I read every case study I could find about companies that had successfully integrated artificial intelligence without eliminating human expertise. What I discovered was fascinating and completely contradicted the simplistic automation model that Meridian Capital was implementing. The most successful AI integrations weren't about replacing human workers with machines. They were about creating seamless partnerships where artificial intelligence handled data processing and pattern recognition, while humans focused on strategy, creativity, and relationship building. The companies that were achieving the best results were using AI to eliminate tedious tasks, so their human employees could spend more time on high-value activities that required emotional intelligence, contextual understanding, and creative problem-solving. Instead of reducing their workforce, they were making their existing teams dramatically more effective. I spent weeks analyzing the specific failures of pure automation approaches. Companies that had tried to replace customer service representatives with chatbots were discovering that customer satisfaction plummeted when complex issues required human judgment. Firms that had automated their analysis functions were missing crucial insights that required contextual understanding and creative interpretation. The pattern was clear. Artificial intelligence excelled at processing large amounts of data and identifying patterns, but it struggled with ambiguity, creativity, and emotional nuance. Human workers were naturally strong in exactly those areas where AI was weak, but they were limited by the amount of information they could process and analyze manually. The obvious solution was to combine the strengths of both, rather than trying to use one to replace the other. During this research phase, I also kept a careful eye on what was happening at Pinnacle Digital. Through industry contacts and public information, I tracked the implementation of Meridian's automation strategy. The results were exactly what I had predicted, but even worse than I had hoped. Within 6 weeks of my departure, they had laid off 12 of my former team members, keeping only 3 junior employees to supervise the AI systems. Initial client feedback was mixed, with several noting that response times had improved, but solution quality had declined. By the end of the second month, 2 major clients had complained formally about the lack of strategic insight in their service interactions. Amanda Foster, who had somehow survived the layoffs because of her technical skills, kept me informally updated on the internal chaos. The AI systems were generating responses quickly, but they frequently missed important, contextual details that human analysts would have caught immediately. The 3 remaining human employees were overwhelmed trying to handle escalated issues while also managing the automated systems. Most importantly, client retention was beginning to suffer. The personal relationships that had kept clients loyal to Pinnacle Digital for years were being replaced by efficient but impersonal automated interactions. Several clients had started exploring alternatives, though they hadn't made any formal decisions yet. Victoria Sinclair's automation strategy was working exactly as I had expected it would. It was reducing costs and improving certain efficiency metrics, but it was also systematically destroying the competitive advantages that had made Pinnacle Digital successful in the first place. Meanwhile, I was developing something that would demonstrate the superior value of human-AI collaboration. But I knew that proving my point would require more than just theoretical models and research papers. I needed to build a real company that could outperform Pinnacle Digital's automated systems in head-to-head competition. 4 months after leaving Pinnacle Digital, I incorporated Synthesis Solutions LLC from my home office in suburban Denver. The name was intentional, reflecting my core philosophy that the future belonged to companies that could synthesize human expertise with artificial intelligence rather than replacing one with the other. My home office became the company's first headquarters. I converted my dining room into a conference space and turned the spare bedroom into a research and development lab where I could prototype the collaborative AI tools that would become our competitive advantage. My initial investment was everything I had saved over the past 5 years. $47,000 that I had been planning to use as a down payment on a larger house. The first 3 months were lonely and often discouraging. I spent my days developing software prototypes, researching potential clients, and refining the business model that would prove human-AI collaboration could outperform pure automation. Most evenings, I questioned whether I was naive to think that one person working from a dining room table could compete against established firms backed by venture capital. But I had advantages that Meridian Capital didn't understand. While they were focused on reducing costs through automation, I was focused on increasing value through augmentation. While they saw human workers as expensive inefficiencies, I saw them as the key to creating services that no purely automated system could match. My first breakthrough came when I developed a prototype system that combined AI-powered data analysis with human strategic interpretation. The artificial intelligence component could process vast amounts of customer data in real time, identifying patterns and trends that would take human analysts days or weeks to discover manually. But instead of using that analysis to generate automated responses, my system presented the insights to human specialists who could interpret the data in context and develop creative strategic recommendations. The difference was dramatic. Traditional AI systems might identify that a client's customer satisfaction scores were declining, but they couldn't understand the complex business context that explained why those scores mattered, or what creative solutions might address the underlying issues. My hybrid approach gave human analysts superhuman data processing capabilities while preserving the contextual understanding and creative problem-solving that made their recommendations truly valuable. Testing this prototype with simulated scenarios, I consistently achieved results that were superior to both pure human analysis and pure AI automation. The AI components allowed for faster and more comprehensive data processing than any human team could achieve manually. while the human components provided strategic insights and creative solutions that no automated system could generate. But prototypes and simulations weren't enough to build a real business. I needed clients who would trust a startup to handle their critical business operations, and I needed to attract talented professionals who would bet their careers on an unproven company with an uncertain future. The client challenge solved itself in an unexpected way. Jennifer Walsh, the VP of Operations who had been present during the disastrous meeting at Pinnacle Digital, reached out to me through LinkedIn. Her message was brief but intriguing. "Elena, I'd like to discuss a potential consulting opportunity. Are you available for a confidential conversation?" We met for coffee at a downtown cafe that was safely neutral territory. Jennifer looked tired and frustrated as she explained her situation. "We're not happy with Pinnacle Digital's new service model," she said bluntly. "The automated responses are faster, but they're missing the strategic insights that your original team used to provide. Our account managers are spending twice as much time explaining context and correcting AI-generated recommendations." Listened carefully as she described the problems that were exactly what I had predicted. The AI systems were generating technically correct responses that completely missed important business context. Strategic recommendations were being based on data patterns without understanding the human and organizational factors that made certain solutions impractical or inappropriate. "We're considering switching providers," Jennifer continued, "but the market seems to be moving toward the same automation model everywhere. I keep thinking about the kind of service we used to get from your team, where AI insights were combined with human understanding." I saw the opportunity immediately, but I was careful not to appear too eager. What if there was a way to get the best of both approaches? Fast, comprehensive data analysis combined with strategic insights that account for your specific business context and organizational culture? Her eyes lit up with interest. "Are you suggesting that you might be developing something like that?" "I'm suggesting that the choice between human expertise and artificial intelligence is a false dichotomy," I replied. "The future belongs to companies that can combine both effectively." Over the next hour, I outlined my vision for human-AI collaboration without revealing specific details about synthesis solutions or my prototype systems. By the end of our conversation, Jennifer had essentially offered to become my first client if I could deliver what I was describing. "We'll start small," she said. "A 3-month pilot project focused on customer satisfaction analysis and strategic recommendations. If you can demonstrate superior results compared to what we're getting from automated systems, we'll consider a larger engagement." The contract value was only $35,000, but it represented validation that my approach had real market demand. More importantly, it would give me a chance to prove that human-AI collaboration could outperform pure automation in real-world conditions with actual business consequences. The talent challenge was solved through a series of conversations with former colleagues who had been affected by Pinnacle Digital's layoffs. Marcus Chen was the first to join Synthesis Solutions. He had been unemployed for 3 months despite his impressive credentials, largely because the market was flooded with experienced analysts who had been displaced by automation initiatives at multiple companies. "Elena," he said when I offered him a position, "I was starting to think that my entire profession was becoming obsolete. What you're describing sounds like a way to prove that human expertise still matters." Sarah Williams joined us 2 weeks later, followed by David Park and 2 other former Pinnacle Digital employees who had been struggling to find positions that valued their strategic capabilities. Within 6 weeks, Synthesis Solutions had grown, from a 1-person startup to a 7-person team working out of my converted home office. The cramped conditions and uncertain future should have been discouraging, but instead, our small team felt energized by the opportunity to prove that there was a better way to integrate technology and human expertise. We weren't just building a consulting firm. We were pioneering a new model that could transform how companies thought about artificial intelligence and human workers. Our first project with Jennifer's company exceeded every expectation I had dared to have. Using our hybrid approach, we identified customer satisfaction issues that Pinnacle Digital's automated systems had completely missed, developed strategic recommendations that addressed root causes rather than just symptoms, and provided insights that helped our client improve their customer retention rates by 12% in just 8 weeks. The results were so impressive that Jennifer referred us to 2 other companies within her network, both of whom were frustrated with the limitations of purely automated service providers. By the end of our 6th month, Synthesis Solutions had revenues of $215,000 and a growing reputation as the firm that had figured out how to make artificial intelligence and human expertise work together effectively. But the real validation came from an unexpected source. Amanda Foster called me on a Friday evening in late spring with news that made everything we were building feel suddenly urgent and important. "Elena," she said, "I thought you should know that 3 more major clients have informed Pinnacle Digital that they're not renewing their contracts. Victoria Sinclair is in full panic mode, and they're quietly reaching out to consulting firms to help them fix their customer satisfaction problems." I felt a chill of anticipation run down my spine. After 8 months of building Synthesis Solutions in the shadows, the moment of direct competition was approaching. Pinnacle Digital and Meridian Capital were about to discover that the woman they had dismissed as too sentimental to understand the future of business had actually built that future while they were busy destroying everything that had made their original company successful. The foundation was solid. The team was ready. The market had validated our approach. Now it was time to show Victoria Sinclair exactly what she had unleashed when she forced me to choose between my principles and my position. 18 months after founding Synthesis Solutions, I stood in our new office space in downtown Denver, watching my team of 22 specialists collaborate on projects that were revolutionizing how companies approached customer analytics. The transformation from my dining room table to a thriving enterprise had been swift, but it hadn't been easy. Every client we won, every successful project we completed, every innovation we developed had been achieved while deliberately staying below the radar of industry publications and conference circuits. The decision to maintain a low profile had been strategic from the beginning. While companies like Pinnacle Digital were making headlines with their automation initiatives and cost-cutting measures, we were quietly building something that would make their approaches look primitive by comparison. Our anonymity gave us freedom to experiment, iterate, and perfect our human-AI collaboration model without the pressure of public scrutiny or competitive interference. Our client roster had grown to include 15 major corporations across 6 different industries. Manufacturing companies were using our hybrid approach to optimize their supply chain operations while maintaining the human insight necessary to navigate complex vendor relationships. Financial services firms were leveraging our systems to provide personalized investment advice that combined algorithmic analysis with the emotional intelligence required to understand individual client needs. Healthcare organizations were using our tools to improve patient outcomes by pairing AI diagnostic support with the clinical judgment that only experienced medical professionals could provide. What made our success particularly satisfying was that we were consistently outperforming purely automated solutions in head-to-head comparisons. Our clients regularly reported that our hybrid approach delivered better results than either traditional human-only consulting or pure AI automation. Response times were faster than manual processes, but solution quality was superior to automated systems. Cost efficiency was competitive with automation, but value creation was exponentially higher. The key to our competitive advantage was understanding that artificial intelligence and human expertise weren't competing technologies. They were complementary capabilities that could amplify each other when properly integrated. Our AI systems handled data processing, pattern recognition, and routine analysis, freeing our human specialists to focus on strategic interpretation, creative problem-solving, and relationship management. The result was consulting services that operated at superhuman scale while maintaining the nuanced understanding that only humans could provide. Marcus Chen had evolved into our director of analytics, leading a team of 8 data scientists who worked alongside AI systems to uncover insights that neither humans nor machines could discover independently. His team could analyze customer behavior patterns across millions of data points in real time, but they also understood the cultural, organizational, and emotional factors that gave those patterns meaning in specific business contexts. Sarah Williams had become our VP of Client Relations, developing relationships with C-level executives who valued strategic guidance over automated efficiency. Her ability to understand the political and personal dynamics within client organizations allowed us to provide recommendations that weren't just analytically sound, but also practically implementable given the human realities of corporate decision-making. David Park was leading our research and development efforts, continuously improving the integration between our AI tools and human workflows. His innovations had reduced the time required for complex analysis by 70%, while increasing the depth and accuracy of our strategic recommendations. More importantly, his systems were designed to make our human specialists more effective rather than eventually replacing them. The financial results spoke for themselves. Synthesis Solutions had generated $2 million in revenue during our second year, with profit margins that exceeded industry standards, because our hybrid approach allowed us to deliver premium value while maintaining competitive operational costs. Our client retention rate was 97%, and our referral rate was higher than any consulting firm in our market segment. But the most meaningful validation came from the personal transformation of our team members. These were professionals who had been told that their expertise was becoming obsolete, that artificial intelligence would soon make their skills irrelevant. Working at Synthesis Solutions, they had discovered that the future belonged to people who could partner with AI rather than being replaced by it. They weren't just employees. They were pioneers, proving that human creativity and machine intelligence could create something more powerful than either could achieve alone. During this period of rapid but quiet growth, I had been carefully monitoring the industry landscape and specifically tracking the ongoing struggles at Pinnacle Digital. The intelligence I gathered through former colleagues, industry contacts, and public information painted a picture of a company in slow-motion collapse, though their problems weren't yet visible to casual observers. Amanda Foster had become an invaluable source of information about Pinnacle Digital's internal challenges. Despite surviving the initial layoffs due to her technical skills, she had grown increasingly frustrated with the limitations of the automated system she was required to maintain. More importantly, she had access to performance metrics that revealed the true cost of Meridian Capital's automation strategy. Client satisfaction scores at Pinnacle Digital had declined steadily over the past year, dropping from our original 94% to 71%. Response times had improved as promised, but solution quality had deteriorated significantly. Clients were reporting that automated recommendations often missed crucial contextual factors, leading to expensive implementation failures and damaged relationships. The 3 remaining human employees from my original team were overwhelmed and demoralized. They were spending most of their time correcting AI-generated errors and trying to rebuild client relationships that had been damaged by impersonal automated interactions. The workload was unsustainable, and employee turnover in the customer service department had reached 40% annually. Most critically, client retention was beginning to suffer in ways that threatened Pinnacle Digital's long-term viability. 5 major clients had already terminated their contracts, citing concerns about service quality and lack of strategic insight. 3 others had reduced their engagement levels significantly, and several more were known to be evaluating alternative providers. Victoria Sinclair and her team at Meridian Capital were discovering that short-term cost savings achieved through automation could quickly be overwhelmed by revenue losses caused by client defection. Their strategy had optimized for efficiency metrics while ignoring the relationship factors that actually drove customer loyalty and business growth. Meanwhile, our success at Synthesis Solutions was beginning to attract attention from exactly the kinds of clients that Pinnacle Digital was losing. Word was spreading through executive networks about a consulting firm that had figured out how to combine the speed of AI with the insight of human expertise. We were receiving inquiries from companies that had tried pure automation approaches and been disappointed with the results. The irony was perfect. While Pinnacle Digital struggled with the limitations of their automated systems, we were thriving by proving that human-AI collaboration could deliver superior results. The approach they had dismissed as sentimental and inefficient was generating better outcomes across every meaningful metric. But I knew that our success would eventually attract the attention of our former employer, and I wanted to be prepared for that confrontation. The growing contrast between our performance and theirs was becoming too significant to ignore. Industry. Analysts were beginning to notice companies that were successfully integrating AI without eliminating human expertise, and several had reached out to learn more about our methodology. I had declined all interview requests and speaking opportunities, maintaining the low profile that had served us so well during our growth phase. But I was also preparing for the moment when stealth would no longer be possible or necessary. At some point, our success would become a direct challenge to everything Meridian Capital believed about the future of business, and they would be forced to respond. The preparation involved more than just business metrics and competitive analysis. I wanted to ensure that when the inevitable confrontation came, we would be ready to demonstrate our superiority, not just in theory, but in direct head-to-head competition. Every system we built, every process we refined, every client relationship we developed was designed to prove definitively that human-AI collaboration represented the future of consulting services. While Synthesis Solutions continued its methodical growth, I never forgot about the colleagues who had been casualties of Meridian Capital's automation obsession. The 15 people who had been laid off from Pinnacle Digital weren't just professional contacts. They were talented individuals whose careers had been disrupted by a fundamentally flawed understanding of how technology should be integrated with human expertise. My success created both an opportunity and an obligation to help these former teammates rebuild their professional lives. But I had to be careful about how I provided that assistance. Direct recruitment could be construed as poaching employees from a former employer, and I couldn't risk legal complications that might interfere with our business development. More importantly, I wanted to ensure that any help I provided was genuinely beneficial to the recipients rather than self-serving for Synthesis Solutions. The approach I developed was systematic but subtle. Through my network of industry contacts, I identified opportunities that would be perfect matches for specific individuals, then made strategic introductions that appeared natural and coincidental. When Lisa Park, one of our former senior analysts, was struggling to find a position that valued her specialized skills in healthcare data analysis, I arranged for her to meet a VP at a medical device company who was desperately seeking exactly her expertise. The introduction happened at an industry conference where all three of us were attending sessions on AI applications in healthcare. During a coffee break, I mentioned to the VP that I had recently met someone whose work on patient outcome prediction models was groundbreaking. Later that day, I suggested to Lisa that she should connect with this executive who was working on fascinating projects in her area of expertise. 3 weeks later, Lisa had a job offer that included a 20% salary increase and the opportunity to lead a team developing next-generation diagnostic tools. Kevin Morrison, our former junior analyst who had been particularly devastated by the layoffs, received similar assistance when I learned that a startup in Austin was looking for someone with his specific combination of technical skills and client service experience. The startup's founder happened to be a former colleague of mine from graduate school, and when we reconnected at an alumni networking event, the conversation naturally turned to the challenges of finding quality talent in the current market. These interventions required careful orchestration and perfect timing, But they were deeply satisfying because they helped talented people find opportunities that were genuinely better than what they had lost at Pinnacle Digital. I wasn't just providing charity. I was helping the market recognize and reward the value that Meridian Capital had foolishly discarded. The most challenging case was Robert Chen, Marcus's younger brother, who had been one of the most junior members of our original team. Robert had been devastated by his termination, not just financially, but emotionally. He had looked up to his older brother and had been proud to work for a company that valued analytical rigor and client service. The layoff had shaken his confidence in his own abilities and his faith in the technology industry. Robert's situation required a different approach because his self-doubt was as much of an obstacle as the competitive job market. I arranged for him to attend a series of professional development workshops that were funded through a scholarship program I had quietly established with the Denver Technology Association. The workshops focused on emerging trends in data science and AI, giving Robert exposure to new skills while rebuilding his confidence in his professional value. During these workshops, Robert met several other young professionals who were navigating similar career transitions. The peer support network that developed naturally from these connections proved to be as valuable as the technical training. Within 6 months, Robert had not only found a new position with a growing analytics firm, but had also become a mentor for other recent graduates entering the field. The scholarship program became one of my most meaningful ongoing projects. Using profits from Synthesis Solutions, I funded educational opportunities for professionals who had been displaced by automation initiatives throughout the industry. The program was administered through the Professional Association, so recipients never knew that their former colleague was providing the support. They simply saw it as recognition that their skills and potential were valued by the broader professional community. Beyond direct career assistance, I also found ways to provide financial support for colleagues who were struggling with the economic impact of unexpected unemployment. When Maria Santos, one of our former client relationship managers, was facing foreclosure after 8 months of job searching, an anonymous investor purchased her mortgage through a subsidiary company and restructured the terms to make her payments manageable during her career transition. The legal structure was complex but completely legitimate. A real estate investment firm that I had established as a side business specialized in purchasing distressed mortgages and working with homeowners to create sustainable payment plans. Maria never knew that her former supervisor was behind the transaction. She simply received a call from a mortgage company offering to help her avoid foreclosure through a restructured payment plan. Similar interventions helped other former colleagues navigate medical bills, student loan payments, and other financial challenges that were exacerbated by extended unemployment. In each case, the assistance was provided through intermediary organizations that preserved anonymity while ensuring that help reached people who genuinely needed it. The emotional impact of providing this support was more significant than I had anticipated. Helping talented people rebuild their careers and stabilize their lives gave me a sense of purpose that went beyond the satisfaction of building a successful business. These weren't just former colleagues. They were good people who had been harmed by a system that valued short-term profits over human dignity. But the assistance I provided wasn't purely altruistic. Every person who found a better opportunity, every professional who rebuilt their confidence, every family that avoided financial catastrophe became a living example of the human cost of Meridian Capital's automation strategy. They were proof that the people Victoria Sinclair had dismissed as expensive inefficiencies were actually valuable professionals who could contribute significantly when given appropriate opportunities. As word spread through professional networks about former Pinnacle Digital employees finding excellent new positions, industry observers began to question the wisdom of mass layoffs in favor of automation. If these professionals were so easily replaceable by AI systems, why were other companies competing to hire them? If their skills were truly obsolete, why were they succeeding in their new roles? The pattern was becoming clear to anyone who was paying attention. The employees who had been laid off weren't failing in the marketplace. They were thriving when given opportunities to apply their expertise in environments that valued human insight alongside technological efficiency. The problem wasn't with their capabilities. It was with Pinnacle Digital's understanding of how to integrate human expertise with artificial intelligence. This realization was spreading beyond just our immediate industry. Business publications were beginning to report on companies that had achieved better results by combining AI with human expertise, rather than using automation to replace workers entirely. Case studies were emerging that demonstrated the superior performance of hybrid approaches across multiple sectors. Synthesis Solutions was contributing to this shift in industry thinking, but so were the success stories of individual professionals who had been given second chances to prove their value. Every former colleague who excelled in a new role, every team that achieved better results by combining human insight with AI tools, every client who chose collaborative approaches over pure automation was helping to build a case against the simplistic replacement model that Meridian Capital had championed. 2.5 years after leaving Pinnacle Digital, I received the phone call that I had been expecting, but dreading. Jennifer Walsh, the client who had given Synthesis Solutions its first contract and had become one of our strongest advocates, was reaching out with news that would change everything. "Elena," she said, her voice tense with frustration, "I need to talk to you about something confidential. Are you available for a secure conversation?" We arranged to meet at the same downtown cafe where we had first discussed the possibility of working together. When I arrived, Jennifer looked exhausted and stressed in a way that I had never seen before. She was normally composed and professional, but today she seemed like someone who had been fighting a losing battle for too long. "Pinnacle Digital is in serious trouble," she said without preamble. "Their automated systems have been failing consistently for the past 6 months, and client satisfaction has reached an all-time low. 3 of their biggest clients have already terminated their contracts, and several others are actively evaluating alternatives." I listened carefully as she described problems that were exactly what I had predicted when Meridian Capital first presented their automation strategy. The AI systems were generating responses quickly, but they were consistently missing crucial contextual factors that experienced human analysts would have caught immediately. Strategic recommendations were being based on data patterns without understanding the business realities that made certain solutions impractical or inappropriate. "The final straw came last week," Jennifer continued. "Their automated system recommended that we restructure our entire customer service department based on efficiency metrics, without understanding that our current structure is designed around regulatory requirements that can't be changed. The recommendation would have put us in violation of federal compliance standards." She paused to take a sip of her coffee, her hands shaking slightly. "Elena, we've been loyal to Pinnacle Digital for over 5 years, but we can't continue with service that creates more problems than it solves. Our board has authorized me to begin evaluating alternative providers." The opportunity was significant, but I was careful not to appear too eager. "What are you looking for in a new provider?" "Exactly what you built for us during that pilot project 2 years ago," she replied. "We want the speed and comprehensiveness of AI analysis, but we need human insight to interpret the data and develop recommendations that actually make sense in our specific business context." I nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds like a substantial engagement. What's the scope of what you're considering?" Jennifer pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "We're looking at a complete replacement of our analytics and strategic consulting services. Annual contract value would be approximately $8 million, with the possibility of expansion if the initial results meet our expectations." I opened the folder and reviewed the scope of work, which was comprehensive and exactly aligned with Synthesis Solutions' capabilities. But what made the opportunity even more significant was the timeline Jennifer outlined. "We need to make a decision within 60 days, she said. "Our current contract with Pinnacle Digital expires at the end of the quarter, and we can't afford to continue with their declining service quality. We're planning to evaluate 3 potential providers, and frankly, you're our first choice if you're interested. The contract would more than double our annual revenue and establish Synthesis Solutions as a major player in the consulting market. But more importantly, it would create a direct competitive confrontation with Pinnacle Digital that would force a public comparison between their automation approach and our human-AI collaboration model. I'm definitely interested, I told Jennifer, but I want to make sure we can deliver everything you need. Can you tell me more about the specific challenges you're facing with Pinnacle Digital's current service? Over the next hour, she detailed a litany of problems that perfectly illustrated the limitations of pure automation approaches. AI-generated reports that were technically accurate but strategically useless. Recommendations that ignored important organizational and cultural factors. Analysis that identified patterns without understanding their significance in specific business contexts. Most damaging was the complete absence of the relationship management that had originally made Pinnacle Digital valuable to their clients. The automated systems could process data and generate reports, but they couldn't understand the human dynamics that made certain recommendations politically feasible, while others were doomed to fail regardless of their analytical merit. "We miss working with people who understand our business," Jennifer said. "The automated responses are fast, but they feel like they're coming from a machine that has never walked in our shoes or faced the kinds of decisions we deal with every day." As we concluded our meeting, Jennifer asked a question that revealed the broader implications of her company's dissatisfaction with Pinnacle Digital. "Elena, are there other companies that are struggling with similar issues? Because if so, I think the market is ready for a provider that can deliver both technological efficiency and human insight." I smiled, thinking about the intelligence I had gathered about Pinnacle Digital's declining client satisfaction and the growing interest in hybrid approaches throughout the industry. "Jennifer, I think you're absolutely right about market readiness. The question isn't whether there's demand for human-AI collaboration. It's whether providers can deliver it effectively." "Well," she said, standing up to leave, "you've already proven that you can. The pilot project you did for us 2 years ago achieved better results than anything we've seen from pure automation approaches. If you can scale that methodology to handle our full requirements, you'll have our business." After Jennifer left, I sat in the cafe for another hour, processing the implications of the opportunity she had presented. This wasn't just a large contract. It was the chance to prove definitively that human-AI collaboration could outperform pure automation in direct head-to-head competition. But the opportunity also represented a significant risk. Taking on Jennifer's company as a client would require expanding our team and capabilities significantly. More importantly, it would make Synthesis Solutions visible to Pinnacle Digital and Meridian Capital in a way that would inevitably lead to direct confrontation. For 2.5 years, I had been building something better while staying carefully below their radar. Success in winning this contract would end that anonymity permanently. Victoria Sinclair and her team would discover that the woman they had dismissed as too sentimental to understand the future of business had actually built a company that was stealing their clients by providing superior service. The prospect was both thrilling and terrifying. I had always known that this confrontation would come eventually, but I hadn't expected it to arrive in such a dramatic and public way. Winning Jennifer's contract would be more than just a business victory. It would be a direct challenge to everything Meridian Capital believed about automation and human expertise. But as I walked back to our office, I realized that we were ready for this challenge. Our team was exceptional, our methodology was proven, and our results spoke for themselves. If Pinnacle Digital wanted to compete on service quality rather than just cost efficiency, we would be happy to show them exactly how wide the gap had become between their automated approach and our human-AI collaboration model. The war that had begun in a conference room 2.5 years ago was about to enter its final phase, and this time, I wouldn't be the one fighting from a position of weakness. The decision to pursue Jennifer's contract required careful strategic planning that extended far beyond simply preparing a compelling proposal. This engagement would transform Synthesis Solutions from a successful boutique consultancy into a major market player. But more importantly, it would create the perfect conditions for demonstrating the superiority of human-AI collaboration over pure automation. I spent the following week analyzing every aspect of the opportunity and its implications. The contract itself was substantial enough to validate our approach in the eyes of industry observers, but the real value was in creating a controlled comparison between our methodology and Pinnacle Digital's automated systems. Jennifer's company had extensive data about their experience with pure automation, which would provide an objective baseline for measuring the improvements we could deliver. But winning the contract would require more than just technical capability. It would demand a level of operational sophistication that we hadn't needed during our previous growth phase. Servicing an engagement of this magnitude would require expanding our team, refining our processes, and developing systems that could handle complex projects while maintaining the quality standards that had made us successful. The team expansion was the most critical element of our preparation. I needed to hire specialists who could work effectively within our human-AI collaboration model, while also being capable of handling the increased complexity and visibility that would come with major client engagements. These couldn't be ordinary consultants. They needed to be people who understood both the technical possibilities of artificial intelligence and the irreplaceable value of human expertise. Marcus Chen and I spent 3 days identifying the specific skills and experience we would need to add to our team. We were looking for people who had been frustrated by the limitations of pure automation approaches and were excited about the possibility of building something better. More importantly, we wanted professionals who had been personally affected by the industry's rush toward replacing human workers with AI systems. The recruitment process became a form of market research as we interviewed candidates who had worked for companies implementing automation strategies similar to Pinnacle Digital's approach. The patterns we discovered were consistent and revealing. Talented professionals were leaving firms that treated them as expensive inefficiencies waiting to be replaced by software. They were seeking opportunities to prove that human expertise could be enhanced rather than eliminated by artificial intelligence. Rebecca Martinez became our new director of strategic analysis. She had spent 3 years at a major consulting firm watching as their automation initiatives systematically degraded the quality of client deliverables while leadership celebrated cost savings and efficiency improvements. Rebecca understood both the capabilities and limitations of AI systems, but more importantly, she knew how to design workflows that maximize the strengths of both human and machine intelligence. Thomas Kim joined us as Senior Technology Integration Specialist. He had been the lead developer on an AI implementation project that had initially appeared successful, but gradually revealed fundamental limitations that pure automation couldn't overcome. Thomas's experience with the failure modes of AI systems made him invaluable for designing hybrid approaches that could avoid the pitfalls that were plaguing companies like Pinnacle Digital. Catherine Wright became our VP of Client Development, bringing with her a deep understanding of how executive decision-making actually works in large organizations. She had witnessed firsthand how automated recommendations often failed because they didn't account for the political, cultural, and emotional factors that influenced whether strategies could be successfully implemented. Each new team member brought not just professional skills but also personal motivation to prove that there was a better way to integrate technology and human expertise. They weren't just employees. They were collaborators in demonstrating that the future belonged to companies that could amplify human capabilities rather than replace them. While we were building our team, I was also developing the strategic approach that would maximize our chances of winning Jennifer's contract while positioning us for the inevitable confrontation with Pinnacle Digital. The proposal itself needed to be more than just a description of our services. It needed to be a manifesto that articulated our vision for the future of consulting and business intelligence. The document I created was structured as a direct response to the limitations that Jennifer had described in Pinnacle Digital's automated approach. For every problem she had identified with pure AI systems, we demonstrated how human-AI collaboration could deliver superior results. For every example of contextual blindness in automated recommendations, we showed how human insight could provide the understanding necessary for practical implementation. But the most powerful element of our proposal was the performance guarantee that we included. We committed to achieving specific improvements in client satisfaction, analytical accuracy, and strategic value compared to the baseline established during Jennifer's experience with Pinnacle Digital. If we failed to meet these targets, we would refund the entire contract value and provide transitional support at no charge. The guarantee was risky, but it served two important purposes. First, it demonstrated our complete confidence in the superiority of our approach. Second, it created objective criteria for measuring our performance against pure automation, which would be crucial for the broader industry validation we were seeking. As we prepared our presentation for Jennifer's evaluation committee, I realized that this engagement represented much more than a business opportunity. It was the culmination of everything we had been building since I walked out of that conference room at Pinnacle Digital. Every innovation we had developed, every process we had refined, every success we had achieved had been preparing us for this moment. The presentation would need to accomplish multiple objectives simultaneously. We needed to convince Jennifer's team that we could deliver superior results compared to their current provider. We needed to demonstrate that our approach was scalable and sustainable for long-term partnership. Most importantly, we needed to articulate a vision for the future that was compelling enough to justify the risk of switching from an established provider to a relatively new firm. The week before our presentation, I received an unexpected piece of intelligence that changed everything about how I understood the competitive landscape. Amanda Foster called me with news that was both shocking and perfectly predictable. "Elena," she said, "I thought you should know that Pinnacle Digital is aware they're losing the Johnson account." Jennifer's company was Johnson Industries, and Amanda's use of their name meant that Pinnacle Digital knew about the competitive evaluation process. "How did they find out?" I asked. "Victoria Sinclair has been calling clients directly, trying to understand why satisfaction scores have been declining." When she spoke with Jennifer Walsh last week, she learned about the contract review and that you're one of the firms being considered. I felt a chill of anticipation. After 2.5 years of building in the shadows, Victoria finally knew that I had become a direct competitor. What was her reaction? Amanda's voice carried a note of satisfaction that surprised me. According to Bradley, she went into full crisis mode. She's been in emergency meetings all week, trying to figure out how to counter what she calls the threat from Elena Rodriguez. The stage was now perfectly set. Pinnacle Digital knew they were in direct competition with the woman they had dismissed as too emotional to understand the future of business. They would have to defend their automation strategy against the human-AI collaboration approach they had rejected. Most importantly, they would have to explain to a dissatisfied client why pure AI was superior to the hybrid methodology that had already demonstrated better results. Jennifer's evaluation committee would see exactly what I had intended from the beginning: a direct comparison between two fundamentally different philosophies about the role of technology in business. On one side would be Meridian Capital's vision of efficiency through automation and human replacement. On the other would be our demonstration that the future belonged to companies that could amplify human expertise through intelligent technology integration. The confrontation I had been preparing for since the day I resigned was finally here, and this time, I wouldn't be the one defending an impossible position. The presentation to Johnson Industries was scheduled for Thursday morning at 9 a.m. in their Executive Conference Center, a modern glass-walled space overlooking downtown Denver's financial district. I arrived 30 minutes early, wanting to test our technology setup and ensure that every element of our demonstration would function flawlessly. This wasn't just a client presentation. It was the moment when 3 years of preparation would either validate our entire approach or expose fatal flaws in our methodology. Jennifer Walsh greeted me in the reception area, her demeanor professional, but noticeably tense. The pressure she was under from her board of directors was evident in the way she checked her phone constantly and the careful formality of her interactions with everyone around her. This decision would define her career trajectory, and she knew that choosing the wrong consulting partner could result in her own termination. "Elena, I want you to know that this evaluation process has attracted significant attention within our organization," she said as we walked toward the conference room. "Our CEO will be joining us today, along with our CFO and VP of Operations. They're all very interested in understanding how your approach differs from traditional automation solutions." The stakes had just escalated dramatically. What I had expected to be a departmental presentation had become an executive-level evaluation that would be scrutinized by Johnson Industries' senior leadership. Success would mean not just winning a large contract, but establishing Synthesis Solutions as a credible alternative to established firms like Pinnacle Digital. Failure would mean public rejection by a high-profile client in front of industry leaders who could influence future opportunities. As we entered the conference room, I was surprised to see 8 people assembled around the table instead of the 4 Jennifer had originally mentioned. In addition to the executives she had described, there were representatives from Johnson Industries' IT department, procurement team, and legal counsel. This wasn't just an evaluation. It was a comprehensive due diligence process that would examine every aspect of our proposed engagement. But the biggest surprise came when Jennifer introduced the final attendee. "Elena, I'd also like you to meet Victoria Sinclair from Meridian Capital. As our current consulting partner, we thought it was appropriate to include her in the evaluation process." Victoria stood up from the far end of the table, offering the same artificial smile I remembered from our confrontation 3 years earlier. She looked older and more stressed than I remembered, with the kind of carefully controlled composure that suggested she was fighting to maintain her professional reputation in the face of mounting evidence that her automation strategy was failing. "Ms. Rodriguez," she said, extending her hand with calculated politeness. "What an interesting surprise. I had no idea that you had started your own consulting firm." I shook her hand firmly, meeting her gaze with complete confidence. "Victoria, it's good to see you again. I'm looking forward to sharing what we've learned about the future of business intelligence and client service." The tension in the room was immediately palpable. Everyone present understood that they were about to witness a direct confrontation between 2 fundamentally different approaches to integrating technology and human expertise. Victoria represented the established industry consensus that automation should replace human workers whenever possible. I represented the emerging alternative that technology should amplify human capabilities rather than eliminate them. Jennifer took her seat at the head of the table and called the meeting to order. "Before we begin, I want to establish the context for today's evaluation. Johnson Industries has been working with Pinnacle Digital for 18 months, and while we've seen some efficiency improvements, we've also encountered significant challenges that are affecting our client satisfaction and strategic effectiveness." She turned to Victoria, giving her the opportunity to respond to the implicit criticism in her introduction. "Victoria, would you like to address those concerns before we hear from Elena?" Victoria's response was polished but defensive. She acknowledged that there had been adjustment challenges as Johnson Industries adapted to automated systems, but she attributed most problems to resistance to change rather than limitations in the technology itself. Her presentation focused on efficiency metrics and cost savings while minimizing the strategic and relationship issues that had prompted Johnson Industries to seek alternatives. "Artificial intelligence represents the future of business operations," Victoria concluded. "Companies that fail to fully embrace automation will be outcompeted by those that do. The temporary disruptions we've experienced are normal parts of any technological transformation." When it was my turn to present, I began not with technology or methodology, but with a fundamental question about the purpose of business intelligence and consulting services. The question we're really addressing today isn't whether artificial intelligence is valuable, I said, advancing to my first slide. It's whether AI should replace human expertise or amplify it. The approach you choose will determine not just your operational efficiency, but your competitive differentiation and long-term client relationships. I walked them through 3 case studies from our work with other clients, demonstrating how human-AI collaboration had achieved superior results compared to both traditional manual processes and pure automation approaches. In each example, our hybrid methodology had delivered faster analysis than human-only teams while providing deeper insights and more practical recommendations than AI-only systems. The key difference was in how we integrated human judgment with machine intelligence. Instead of using AI to replace human decision-making, we used it to process vast amounts of data that human analysts could then interpret in context. Instead of automating relationship management, we used technology to give our human specialists better information for building stronger client partnerships. The fundamental limitation of pure automation, I explained, is that it optimizes for consistency and efficiency without understanding the business context that makes certain recommendations practical while others are doomed to fail. I advanced to a slide showing the comparative results from our pilot project with Johnson Industries 2 years earlier. During that 3-month engagement, our hybrid approach had achieved client satisfaction scores that were 27 points higher than what they were currently experiencing with Pinnacle Digital's automated systems. Victoria interrupted at this point, clearly frustrated with the direction of the presentation. Ms. Rodriguez, those pilot results were achieved during a much smaller engagement with limited scope. There's no evidence that your approach can scale to handle enterprise-level requirements. I smiled, having anticipated exactly this objection. Actually, Victoria, we've scaled our methodology significantly since that pilot project. Would you like to see some examples? The next 15 minutes of my presentation demolished every argument Victoria had made about the superior scalability of pure automation. I showed them how Synthesis Solutions had grown from a single-person startup to a 25-person firm that was handling engagements across multiple industries and client sizes. Our technology infrastructure could process more data than Pinnacle. Digital systems while maintaining the human oversight that ensured strategic relevance and practical implementation. Most importantly, I demonstrated that our approach wasn't just theoretically superior. It was generating measurably better business results for our clients. Customer satisfaction scores, retention rates, strategic value creation, and implementation. Success rates were all significantly higher for companies using our human-AI collaboration model compared to those relying on pure automation. The presentation concluded with a detailed proposal for Johnson Industries that addressed every concern they had raised about Pinnacle Digital's service, while guaranteeing specific performance improvements. We would take complete responsibility for their business intelligence and strategic consulting needs, delivering faster analysis than manual processes with deeper insights than automated systems. During the question and answer session that followed, the contrast between our approaches became even more apparent. Victoria's responses focused on defending the theoretical benefits of automation, while minimizing the practical problems that Johnson Industries had experienced. My responses demonstrated specific solutions to their actual challenges, while showing how human-AI collaboration could deliver results that neither approach could achieve independently. The most telling moment came when Johnson Industries' CEO asked about our respective philosophies regarding the future of work and technology integration. Victoria's answer was predictable. The future belongs to companies that can eliminate human inefficiencies through comprehensive automation. Workers who can't adapt to AI-driven processes will be replaced by those who can. My response was fundamentally different. The future belongs to companies that can amplify human creativity and expertise through intelligent technology integration. The goal isn't to replace people with machines. It's to make people capable, of achieving things that neither humans nor machines could accomplish alone. The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications of these two visions. One saw human workers as obstacles to efficiency that should be eliminated whenever possible. The other saw them as the key to creating value that no purely automated system could match. As the formal presentation concluded, I noticed several members of Johnson Industries' team exchanging meaningful glances. The contrast between our approaches had been even starker than I had hoped, and the evidence supporting human-AI collaboration over pure automation had been overwhelming. But I also noticed Victoria's reaction to the presentation, and it was clear that she understood the broader implications of what had just happened. This wasn't just about winning or losing a single contract. This was about proving which philosophy would define the future of consulting and business intelligence. As we prepared to leave, Jennifer announced that Johnson Industries would make their decision within 2 weeks. Both firms would be notified simultaneously, and the unsuccessful bidder would receive detailed feedback about the factors that influenced their choice. Walking out of that conference room, I knew that regardless of Johnson Industries' decision, the confrontation I had been preparing for since leaving Pinnacle Digital was now complete. Victoria Sinclair had been forced to defend her automation strategy against the human-AI collaboration approach she had dismissed 3 years earlier. Industry leaders had witnessed a direct comparison between two fundamentally different visions for the future of work. The quiet intern who had been told she was too emotional to understand business efficiency had just demonstrated superior results to the venture capitalists who thought they knew better. The call came on a Tuesday morning exactly 2 weeks after our presentation. Jennifer Walsh's voice was professional, but carried an undertone of excitement that immediately told me everything I needed to know. Elena, I'm calling to inform you that Johnson Industries has selected Synthesis Solutions as our new strategic consulting partner. The contract will begin on the 1st of next month, and we're excited to start working together. The victory was satisfying, but what made it truly meaningful was what Jennifer said next. I want you to know that this decision was unanimous among our executive team. Your presentation didn't just demonstrate superior methodology, it showed us a completely different way of thinking about technology and human expertise. We're not just changing consulting firms. We're adopting a new philosophy that we believe will transform how we operate as a company. After we concluded the call, I sat in my office for several minutes processing the implications of what had just happened. Johnson Industries hadn't just chosen Synthesis Solutions over Pinnacle Digital. They had chosen human-AI collaboration over pure automation as their strategic direction. The validation was more complete than I had dared to hope. But I knew that Victoria Sinclair's reaction to this loss would be swift and aggressive. Losing a major client to a competitor was serious enough, but losing to the woman she had dismissed as too sentimental to understand the future of business would be personally devastating. I didn't have to wait long to discover how she would respond. The article appeared in Business Intelligence Weekly the following Thursday, with a headline that immediately grabbed industry attention. The hidden threat to AI innovation, how emotional. Attachment to human workers is undermining business efficiency. The piece was clearly Victoria's attempt to discredit our success by framing human-AI collaboration as a step backward rather than an evolution forward. She argued that companies like Johnson Industries were making short-sighted decisions based on comfort with familiar processes rather than embracing the revolutionary potential of pure automation. The consulting industry is at a critical juncture, Victoria was quoted as saying. Companies that cling to expensive, human-dependent processes will be outcompeted by those that fully embrace AI-driven efficiency. Recent setbacks in automation adoption reflect implementation challenges, not fundamental limitations of the technology. The article went on to describe Synthesis Solutions as a boutique firm capitalizing on automation anxiety rather than addressing legitimate business needs. Victoria suggested that our approach was appealing to executives who were afraid of change but would ultimately prove unsustainable when market pressures forced companies to optimize for maximum efficiency. Reading the article, I realized that Victoria still fundamentally misunderstood what we had built and why it was succeeding. She continued to see the choice as between efficient machines and expensive humans, rather than recognizing that the future belonged to companies that could combine both effectively. But the article also revealed something more significant. Victoria was worried enough about our success to launch a public relations offensive against our approach. The dismissive confidence she had displayed 3 years earlier had been replaced by defensive aggression that suggested she understood the threat we represented to her entire worldview. I decided that the time had come to respond publicly and definitively. For 3 years, I had built synthesis solutions while maintaining a low profile and avoiding industry publicity. But Victoria's attempt to discredit our approach demanded a response that would clarify the real differences between our methodologies and their respective results. The opportunity came when Marcus Chen forwarded me an invitation from the Colorado Technology Association to speak at their annual conference on the future of work in an AI-driven economy. The timing was perfect, and the audience would include many of the industry leaders who had read Victoria's article and were trying to understand the implications of our success. My presentation was titled, Beyond Replacement: How Human AI Collaboration is Reshaping Business Intelligence. Instead of responding directly to Victoria's criticisms, I focused on demonstrating the superior results that companies were achieving through our approach. The presentation began with a simple question. If artificial intelligence is truly superior to human expertise, why are companies using pure automation approaches struggling with client satisfaction and retention, while firms using human-AI collaboration are achieving record performance? I walked the audience through detailed case studies that compared the results achieved by companies using different approaches to AI integration. The patterns were consistent and compelling. Organizations that had tried to replace human expertise with automation were experiencing the kinds of problems that Pinnacle Digital had encountered with Johnson Industries. Companies that had implemented human-AI collaboration were achieving better results across every meaningful metric. The question isn't whether artificial intelligence is valuable, I explained. It's whether we use AI to replace human capabilities or to amplify them. The companies that choose amplification are consistently outperforming those that choose replacement. The most powerful part of the presentation was when I revealed the aggregate performance data from Synthesis Solutions' client base compared to industry benchmarks. Our clients were achieving customer satisfaction scores that averaged 23 points higher than companies using pure automation approaches. Retention rates were 97% compared to industry averages in the mid-70s. Most importantly, our clients were reporting strategic value creation that was measurably superior to what they had experienced with traditional consulting or automated systems. During the question and answer session, someone from the audience asked about the criticism that had appeared in Business Intelligence Weekly. Some industry leaders have suggested that human-AI collaboration is just a temporary compromise that delays the inevitable transition to full automation, the questioner said. How do you respond to that perspective? I smiled, having prepared for exactly this question. I would suggest that the evidence speaks for itself. Companies using our approach aren't compromising, they're optimizing. They're achieving results that pure automation cannot match because they understand that human creativity and machine intelligence are complementary capabilities, not competing alternatives. I paused to let that sink in before continuing. The real question is whether the industry will learn from the superior results that human-AI collaboration is generating, or whether some firms will continue pursuing a replacement strategy that consistently underperforms compared to amplification approaches. The response from the audience was overwhelmingly positive. During the networking session that followed, I was approached by executives from dozens of companies who were frustrated with the limitations of pure automation and interested in learning more about our methodology. But the most significant conversation came from an unexpected source. Bradley Morrison, my former CEO from Pinnacle Digital, approached me during the reception with an expression that combined embarrassment, regret, and genuine curiosity. "Elena," he said, "I've been following your success, and I want you to know that I've realized we made a serious mistake 3 years ago. What you've built proves that there was a better path than the one Meridian Capital convinced us to take." I was gracious but direct in my response. "Bradley, I appreciate you saying that. The important thing now is that companies learn from these experiences and make better decisions about how to integrate technology and human expertise going forward." He nodded thoughtfully. "Would you be open to discussing how Pinnacle Digital might transition toward a more collaborative approach? We're losing clients to firms like yours, and our board is starting to question whether pure automation was the right strategy." The irony was perfect. The CEO who had given me an ultimatum 3 years earlier was now asking for my help to save his company from the consequences of choosing automation over human expertise. "Bradley," I replied, "I think that conversation would be valuable for the entire industry. But it would need to be based on genuine commitment to changing your approach, not just trying to compete more effectively with existing methods." As I drove home from the conference, I realized that the confrontation with Victoria Sinclair and Meridian Capital had evolved into something larger and more significant than personal vindication. We had proven that human-AI collaboration could consistently outperform pure automation, and industry leaders were beginning to recognize the implications of that demonstration. The woman who had been dismissed as too emotional to understand the future of business had just redefined what that future would look like. The transformation of industry opinion accelerated rapidly following my presentation at the Colorado Technology Association conference. Within 3 weeks, I received inquiries from 6 major corporations that were evaluating alternatives to their current automation-focused consulting relationships. More importantly, 3 industry publications requested interviews about our methodology and results. But the most dramatic development came from an entirely unexpected direction. Amanda Foster called me on a Friday evening with news that changed everything about the competitive landscape. "Elena, you need to know that there's been a major shift at Pinnacle Digital. Victoria Sinclair was terminated yesterday, and Meridian Capital is conducting a comprehensive review of their automation strategy." I was stunned. Victoria had seemed so confident and entrenched in her position that I hadn't imagined her vulnerability to the kind of client losses and performance problems that Pinnacle Digital was experiencing. "What happened?" I asked. "From what I can gather, it was a combination of factors," Amanda explained. "Johnson Industries wasn't the only major client they lost this quarter. 2 other large accounts terminated their contracts, and several more have reduced their engagement levels significantly. The board of directors apparently decided that Victoria's approach wasn't working and made her the scapegoat for the declining performance." The irony was devastating. The woman who had forced me to choose between my principles and my position had been removed from her own position because the strategy she had championed was destroying the company's relationships with its most valuable clients. But Amanda's next revelation was even more shocking. "Elena, there's something else. Bradley Morrison called an all-hands meeting yesterday to announce that Pinnacle Digital is exploring a strategic partnership with a firm that specializes in human-AI collaboration. He didn't mention any names, but everyone knows he's talking about synthesis solutions. The possibility that my former employer might want to partner with the company I had built in response to their rejection was almost too surreal to process. But it also represented an opportunity to prove definitively that human-AI collaboration was superior to pure automation." The formal approach came 2 days later when Bradley called me directly. His tone was humble and respectful in a way that contrasted sharply with the dismissive attitude he had displayed during our final meeting 3 years earlier. "Elena, I want to discuss a possibility that could benefit both our companies," he began. "Pinnacle Digital has significant infrastructure and client relationships, But we've learned that our automation-focused approach has serious limitations. Synthesis Solutions has developed a methodology that's clearly superior, but you might benefit from our scale and established market presence. The proposal he outlined was comprehensive and surprisingly generous. Pinnacle Digital would acquire Synthesis Solutions for a valuation that reflected our demonstrated success and growth potential. I would become the Chief Strategy Officer with complete authority over methodology and client service approaches. The combined company would transition all clients to our human-AI collaboration model, while leveraging Pinnacle Digital's resources to accelerate our expansion. Essentially, Bradley concluded, we're proposing to adopt your approach as our company's new direction, with you leading the transformation. The offer was financially attractive and professionally validating, but it also raised complex questions about the best way to achieve our broader mission of proving that human expertise should be amplified rather than replaced by artificial intelligence. After discussing the proposal with my team, I realized that the partnership could serve purposes beyond just growing our business. If Pinnacle Digital publicly adopted our methodology and achieved superior results compared to their previous automation approach, it would provide definitive evidence that human-AI collaboration was more effective than pure automation. The negotiation process took 6 weeks and resulted in an agreement that was structured more like a merger of equals than a traditional acquisition. Synthesis Solutions would maintain operational independence while gaining access to Pinnacle Digital's resources and client base. I would lead the strategic transformation of the combined company, while Marcus, Sarah, David, and our other key team members would direct the implementation of our methodology across all client engagements. Most importantly, the merger agreement included provisions that guaranteed our human-AI collaboration approach would be the standard methodology for the combined company. There would be no compromise with pure automation approaches or gradual transition periods. Every client engagement would demonstrate the superior value of amplifying human expertise through intelligent technology integration. The announcement of our merger made headlines in every major business publication, largely because it represented such a dramatic reversal of conventional wisdom about automation and efficiency. Industry analysts struggled to understand how a small startup had not only outcompeted an established firm, but had convinced that firm to adopt the startup's methodology as their new strategic direction. The press coverage focused extensively on the personal narrative of my journey from terminated employee to successful entrepreneur to strategic leader of my former employer. But the real story was about the vindication of an approach to technology integration that prioritized human value creation over pure efficiency metrics. Victoria Sinclair's response to the merger was predictably bitter. In an interview with Forbes, she criticized Pinnacle Digital's decision as a step backward that reflects fear of change rather than sound business judgment. Companies that resist full automation will eventually be forced to adopt it by competitive pressures, she argued. This merger represents a temporary setback for AI innovation, not a sustainable business strategy. But her criticism carried little weight in light of the objective evidence. The clients who had left Pinnacle Digital during her tenure were expressing enthusiasm about the merger and the transition to human-AI collaboration. Industry observers were noting that the combined company was positioned to deliver services that neither pure human consulting nor pure automation could match. The first 6 months after the merger provided overwhelming validation of our approach. Client satisfaction scores increased by an average of 31 points across Pinnacle Digital's entire customer base. Retention rates improved to 96%, and several clients who had terminated their contracts during the automation period returned to work with the new collaborative methodology. More importantly, the financial results demonstrated that human-AI collaboration was not just more effective than pure automation, it was more profitable. By delivering superior value to clients, we were able to command premium pricing while maintaining competitive operational costs. The enhanced capabilities that AI provided to our human specialists allowed us to handle more complex engagements with better results, creating a virtuous cycle of improved performance and increased Revenue. The industry transformation accelerated as other consulting firms began adopting similar approaches. The success of our merger had proven that human-AI collaboration was not just a niche methodology, but a fundamental improvement over both traditional consulting and pure automation. Within a year, 3 major competitors had restructured their operations to emphasize human expertise enhanced by artificial intelligence rather than human replacement through automation. Industry conferences that had previously focused on automation efficiency began highlighting case studies of successful human-AI collaboration. The woman who had been told she was too emotional to understand the future of business had fundamentally redefined how that future would be shaped. 2 years after the merger, I stood before an audience of 800 business leaders at the National Business Intelligence Summit, delivering the keynote address on the Human-AI Partnership Building Sustainable Competitive Advantage Through Collaborative Intelligence. The transformation in industry thinking had been remarkable, but I knew that our success represented just the beginning of a much larger shift in how companies approach technology integration and human value creation. The presentation began with a question that challenged the fundamental assumptions that had driven automation strategies for the past decade. What if the choice between human expertise and artificial intelligence was never really a choice at all? What if the companies that achieve sustainable competitive advantage are those that understand how to maximize the value created when human creativity and machine intelligence work together? I walked the audience through 5 years of data, comparing companies that had implemented pure automation strategies with those that had adopted human-AI collaboration approaches. The results were consistently dramatic across every industry and company size. Organizations using collaborative methodologies achieved higher customer satisfaction, better employee retention, superior innovation rates, and stronger financial performance. But the most significant finding was about sustainability and adaptability. Companies that had replaced human expertise with automation were struggling to adapt when market conditions changed or when their AI systems encountered situations they hadn't been trained to handle. Organizations using human-AI collaboration were more resilient because their human specialists could interpret new data, adjust strategies based on changing conditions, and develop creative solutions to unexpected challenges. The fundamental limitation of pure automation, I explained, isn't technical, it's strategic. AI systems optimize for consistency and efficiency within defined parameters, but business success increasingly requires adaptability, creativity, and the ability to navigate complex human relationships. The presentation included detailed case studies from our work with Johnson Industries and dozens of other clients who had achieved transformational results through human-AI collaboration. But I also spent significant time discussing the broader implications for workforce development, educational priorities, and economic policy. We're not just talking about consulting methodology, I said. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how society approaches the integration of technology and human capability. The companies and countries that master human-AI collaboration will have decisive advantages in the global economy. During the question and answer session, someone asked about the lessons learned from Victoria Sinclair's automation approach and whether there were legitimate applications for pure AI systems. Victoria wasn't wrong about the value of artificial intelligence, I replied. She was wrong about the best way to leverage that value. AI systems excel at processing large amounts of data, identifying patterns, and executing consistent processes, but they struggle with ambiguity, creativity, and the kind of contextual understanding that drives strategic decision-making. I paused to let that sink in before continuing. The goal isn't to limit AI capability, it's to understand how AI capability can best be combined with human expertise to create results that neither could achieve independently. The response from the audience indicated that this perspective had become widely accepted throughout the industry. The automation anxiety that had characterized business discussions 5 years earlier had been replaced by excitement about collaborative possibilities. But the most meaningful development was the broader impact our approach was having on workforce development and employment practices. Companies using human-AI collaboration were creating more jobs, not fewer, because they were discovering that enhanced human capabilities could generate value that justified increased employment. Instead of replacing workers with machines, successful companies were using machines to make workers more effective, more creative, and more valuable. The result was a virtuous cycle where technological advancement increased human employment rather than eliminating it. Educational institutions were beginning to adapt their curricula to prepare students for careers that would involve close collaboration with AI systems. Business schools were teaching courses on human-AI teamwork design. Engineering programs were incorporating modules on collaborative intelligence architecture. The policy implications were equally significant. Government agencies were recognizing that human-AI collaboration strategies could address automation displacement while maintaining technological competitiveness. Economic development programs were beginning to prioritize companies that demonstrated sustainable employment practices alongside technological innovation. 3 months after the summit, I received an invitation that represented the ultimate validation of our approach. The World Economic Forum requested that I lead a working group on human-AI collaboration for sustainable economic development at their annual meeting in Switzerland. The working group brought together business leaders, government officials, academic researchers, and technology developers from around the world to develop frameworks for maximizing the benefits of AI integration while preserving human value creation. The discussions were complex and sometimes contentious, but the consensus that emerged was clear. The future belonged to societies that could effectively combine human and artificial intelligence rather than choosing one over the other. The final report from our working group became one of the most downloaded documents in World Economic Forum history. It outlined specific strategies for companies, educational institutions, and governments to promote human-AI collaboration while avoiding the pitfalls of pure automation approaches. But the most personally satisfying development was the transformation that had occurred within the consulting industry itself. The approach that Victoria Sinclair had dismissed as sentimental and inefficient had become the industry standard. Companies that continued to pursue pure automation strategies were increasingly seen as outdated and strategically misguided. The quarterly industry report published by Business Intelligence Weekly included a special section on the Rodriguez effect and its impact on consulting methodology across multiple sectors. The article noted that client satisfaction scores for the industry as a whole had improved by an average of 27 points since human-AI collaboration had become widely adopted. More importantly, the industry was attracting and retaining talent at levels that hadn't been seen in over a decade. Young professionals who had been avoiding consulting careers because they feared automation displacement were now choosing the field because they saw opportunities to work with cutting-edge technology while applying their creative and strategic capabilities. The transformation was complete, but I knew that our success represented responsibility as well as vindication. We had proven that there was a better way to integrate technology and human expertise, but that proof was only valuable if it led to sustainable improvements in how companies operated and how people worked. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.